How is everyone doing? This is Laura, as every Thursday, for another weekly presentation about the freight market. All right, let's cut through all the noise and get you a crystal clear picture of what's happening in the U.S. freight market right now. If you're out there running a truck, this is your must-have briefing. Okay, let's jump right into the big question, the puzzle that everyone seems to be talking about. We're seeing this huge surge in freight volume, way more than last year. But for a lot of you, your rates just haven't budged. It feels wrong, doesn't it? So what is actually going on out there? And here it is, laid out in black and white. For dry vans, spot load postings are up a staggering 40% compared to last year. I mean, that's a huge jump in demand. But then you look at the rates, and they're up just a few cents. All that extra work, all that extra freight, and it's not really putting any more money in your pocket. Figuring out why that's happening is the key to understanding this entire market. And the key to unlocking this whole mystery comes down to one little number, the tender rejection rate. Now, all this means is the percentage of contract loads that carriers are turning down. See, when rejections are high, it means carriers have better paying options on the spot market. That signals tight capacity, and rates start to climb. But when that rate is low, well, that tells a very, very different story. And boom, here's the answer to our puzzle. Right now, carriers are accepting about 95% of their contract loads. That rejection rate is incredibly low. What this tells us is that even with that big jump in freight volume, there's still just way too much capacity out there. Too many trucks available for the loads. And that competition, that's what's keeping a firm lid on any real movement in spot rates. But here's the thing, that national picture, it's kind of misleading. The market isn't just one story, it's really three different stories, all playing out at the same time. To see what's really going on, you've got to break it down by equipment type, your van, your reefer, and your flatbed. Now this table, this tells you everything you need to know. Dry van is, well, it's holding steady, about 6 loads for every truck. Reefer is looking a little bit stronger, at 10 loads per truck. But then you get to flatbed. And it's playing a completely different game. Yeah, the dollar per mile rate looks similar, but that load to truck ratio, that's what tells the real story. Looking at that data, it really begs the question, doesn't it? If you're trying to figure out where the demand is strongest, where capacity is the tightest, one of these segments is clearly just pulling away from the rest of the pack. That number right there says it all, 26.7. We're talking about almost 27 loads available for every single flatbed posted. That, my friends, is a tight market. So yeah, the answer couldn't be clearer. Flatbed is where all the action is. Demand from things like industrial and construction freight has created this massive squeeze on capacity, a squeeze that we're just not seeing in the van and reefer worlds right now. Okay, so we've looked at the big national picture. Now let's bring this down to ground level and make it a bit more concrete. Let's look at how these market forces play out on a real-world lane that a lot of you drive, that connection between Florida and Texas. To really understand this lane, you have to get the difference between a head haul and a back haul. Think of it like this. A head haul pays you a premium to get your truck in, and a back haul is the cheap trip you've got to take just to get back out. Nailing that difference is what decides if you make a profit on the round trip. And that Florida to Texas route is a classic example. Because Florida is such a huge consumer market, hauling freight into Florida is a head haul. You can get a great rate. But the moment you're there, finding a good load to get back out is really tough. It's a back haul market, which means you'll probably have to take a discounted rate just to get back to a freight hub like Texas. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The data backs this up completely. A recent market update put it pretty plainly. The Southeast has the lowest load-to-truck ratios, which is just a fancy way of saying there are way more trucks stuck in a place like Florida than there are loads to get them out. So, we've covered capacity, we've talked lane dynamics, but there's a new wild card in play now, and this one has absolutely nothing to do with freight volume and everything to do with enforcement, and it is taking drivers off the road as we speak. Take a good long look at this number, over 3,000. And no, that's not a rate per mile or a load-to-truck ratio. That is a count of individual drivers. That's right, that's how many drivers got put out of service in just a couple of months this summer for violating the English Language Proficiency, or ELP, requirement. Since they brought enforcement back in late June, this has become a very real and very serious risk for thousands of drivers. But here is the really crucial part. Your personal risk depends entirely on where you drive. Look at Texas. Only about 14% of drivers cited there are put out of service. But cross the state line into Arkansas, and that number skyrockets to nearly 73%. And in South Dakota, it's 100%. Every single driver cited for an ELP violation there was shut down on the spot. So, after looking at all of this, capacity, the different lanes, this new enforcement risk, what does it all actually mean for you on the road right now? Let's boil it all down to the key takeaways. First thing, excess capacity is still the name of the game, so don't expect spot rates to really take off until we see those tender rejections start to climb. Second, if you can haul it, flatbed is absolutely the place to be. Third, remember the geography is everything. You've got to know your lanes and avoid getting stuck in those backhaul traps like Florida. And finally, you have to watch out for that aggressive ELP enforcement. Knowing which states are cracking down can be the difference between finishing your trip and getting shut down. And that leaves us with one last thought, something to chew on. For years, being successful was all about finding the best rate. But with these huge differences in enforcement from one state to the next, a whole new variable is in the mix. So is knowing which states will shut you down now just as vital to your bottom line as knowing which lanes will pay you the most? It's definitely something to think about as you plan that next route.